Good day, everybody. Zack here with RevZilla, and welcome to another episode of Daily Rider. This time around, not just any 1975 Honda Trail 90, that is the 1975 Honda Trail 90 that made it to the very top of Alaska in a recent episode of CTXP. And as we covered in that episode, this bike with its low price and semi-automatic transmission and indestructible 89cc engine have made it the most successful and best-selling iteration of a motorcycle in the history of the world. So, after handling so many daily rides over the years, I figured, what's one more? Here we go. Okie dokie, everybody. Here we go. Honda Trail 90. Yeah, gosh, where do you start with this sucker? We'll talk more about the history of where the bike came from as we're riding, but I guess some things that are important to note looking at this sucker. Of course, the Alaska sticker that I added, or I should say we added, to the fender, just, you know, a little badge of honor since this little bad boy conquered Alaska. And that's actually the first thing I wanted to talk about. If you have not seen the CTXP episode where my colleague Ari Henning and I ride from Anchorage to the very top of Alaska on this bike and a modern Trail 125, you should watch that. And you should also watch Ari's episode of the shop manual where he refreshed this bike, took it all down to bare parts, refreshed the engine. Not a full restoration because we like the patina. He especially liked the patina, which I agree with. Yeah, watch both of those videos if you haven't watched this one yet, because there'll be at least a little bit of reference to those things, and all of this will make a little bit more sense if you do that. So yeah, these Shinko tires that we threw on there because the old ones were super rotten, and they're really gummy and soft, these tires, and we were super concerned actually that they were just going to wear out because they feel like bubble gum, but they lasted 1,000 miles across Alaska plus whatever's left on the tread, plenty. So yeah, here's the little stone simple engine, and this sort of swoop of a pipe with the heat guard on it, which became really kind of a style icon, carried on into the Trail 110 and eventually mimicked by the modern Trail 125. So you've got your heel toe shifter, 4-speed transmission, automatic clutch, so no clutch lever here. Couple of nifty little features here. An altitude compensating carburetor, so you can pull this out if you're above 6,000 feet in the mountains and compensate for the elevation, which is pretty cool, I think. And then the high-low range transmission. So this little lever down here, you can kick the entire 4-speed transmission down a whole set of gears. So, you know, the bike doesn't have a ton of power being an 89cc air-cooled engine, but you could you had a low range basically, which is pretty nifty. And then the extra gas can, which of course was something we talked about, let's say, in the CTXP episode. And yeah, just a handsome little machine. I think we can agree. And like I said, responsible for who knows how many millions of daily rides all around the world over the years. So I'm excited to be doing this. All right, let's fire this bad Nelly up, shall we? We can flick the key over, do the on position, get a little neutral light there, and then we can kickstart it to life. Kickstarter's a little finicky, but just an old fella. Can't blame him for that. The dashboard, stone simple, just like the engine. We'll talk a little bit more about that guy. You will notice the speedometer does not work. Ari Henning sent his apologies for that. Couldn't get the parts in time to fix the speedometer before the Daily Rider episode. So you might say the refresh and quasi-restoration continues. But anyhow, I think we're ready to hit the road here. So I'm going to drop it into first gear. Click. Off we go. Okie doke. First red light right off the bat. See how it goes keeping up with traffic as we accelerate away from the light here. Toyota Camry and a Chevy Silverado just sort of gently accelerating. We are at maximum thrust. Third gear. Wind out third gear a little bit. Grab fourth gear. Yeah. All right, as we wait at this red light, we can talk very briefly about specs. And I actually don't know any specs on this bike. How about that? So we'll put them on screen here. Seat height? Yep, correct. Overall weight of the bike, I also don't remember. I want to say 252, 247. We'll put it on screen. There we go. That's what it was. Right. You think I'd be better at this by now. Claimed horsepower very low. Price, also didn't mention that in the intro because it kind of depends, right? This bike's from 1975. We picked this one up for 1,900 bucks, I think. And it depends how nice the one you find is. Like, we found a basket case box of parts for 400 bucks, I think, but it basically required rebuilding the entire bike. And then really nice ones, I don't know, thousands of bucks, 3,000, 5,000 bucks sometimes. It's wild how much money people charge for these old motorcycles. Yeah, I got away from that Harley guy. He knows a classic when he sees one. So yeah, sorry if the specs were disappointing. But really what I wanted to focus on in this episode is not the specs of the bike or how tall the seat is or how much you might spend to get one. For that, you really just should do your own research. This is about experiencing a classic of the motorcycle world and an old bike. Yeah, 90. Yeah. Your first motorcycle? 1967, 68, yeah, so this is 75, not too far after.
And I ended up with a Goldwing 1200.
All right, see you later. That is exactly what I'm talking about, riding around on an old bike. It's pretty cool. Be trotting along here on a slice of history. Not taking the highway route for this daily rider, which I hope is obvious. But more to the point, let's talk about the history of the Trail 90. So where this bike came from basically was Honda had the little Cub, little 50cc urban runabout, you know, semi-automatic transmission. So, you know, delivery drivers could carry noodles across Tokyo with one hand and not have to use a clutch lever with the other hand. Kind of brilliant idea. Imported them to the United States, and it just wasn't going all that well. They weren't selling that many of them. Anyway, this dude up in Idaho had taken, hey now, I got old brakes, man, take it easy. This guy up in Idaho was taking these little 50cc Hondas and putting a big rear sprocket on it, a cheater rear sprocket to give it lower gearing, and putting knobby tires on it and sort of marketing it to people, selling it to people as sort of a woodsman's bike. Ooh, pushing yellow light, full thrust. And people in Idaho thought, well, heck yeah, that's great. I can get out to my hunting camp or whatever I need to do, and it's got nice low gearing. I can chug along, I can put a chainsaw on the back, whatever you need to do with it. And this guy started selling tons of them. So American Honda, looking at the data, they're like, why is this guy in Idaho selling all these bikes? So they went, looked, saw what he was doing, sent the plans to Honda Japan and said, look, this seems like what people want in the United States. And the very next year, I believe, Honda introduced the Trail, early 60s sometime, and running a little bit funny here, pull a full choke. So that was a sort of derivation of it, and then there was an evolution that followed. You know, the engine got slightly bigger, and by the late 60s was a 90, I think, and then early in the 70s Honda adopted the telescopic fork. It used to be the sort of like leading link or trailing link kind of front end, old school front end. So conventional telescopic fork was added in the early 70s, I believe, and then 1974 was when they added blinkers, I believe, to the Trail 90. And at that point, the thing was legal for the road. You could ride it anywhere you needed to go, and it already had a burgeoning customer base of people that wanted to learn how to ride a motorcycle, and this was an unintimidating, easy, cheap way to do it. Oh yeah, and at some point during that time they added the this folding handlebar, which this latch comes back and the whole thing pivots to the side, so you can fold the handlebar and tuck it into a truck or a van nice and easy. Lots of brilliant little pieces of innovation sprinkled on this bike, and eventually turned it into the sort of legend that it is today. Anyway, that's a quick history of how the Honda Trail came to be, pulling from my memory anyway. I will put a link, if I'm halfway good at my job, I'll put a link in the description of this YouTube video for the story on the Honda website that you can read up on briefly and do your own research if you like. But a pretty cool thing, pretty cool way for a motorcycle to come to be, and not just come to be, but come to be such a legendary piece of motorcycling history. And jump on the brakes. The brakes on this bike are pretty good, actually. I mean, you know, good is an overstatement, but not bad, considering it's just a tiny little drum brake. Look at that thing. Oh, it's ridiculous. I mean, if that was on a little go-kart that went 10 miles an hour, you'd be like, that's not enough brake. Rear brake works pretty well, though. Another drum back there. It was a drum brake era. Here we go. Pure acceleration. I don't know what I'm doing in the left lane. Come on, little guy. So we usually talk about ergonomics at some point during the daily ride, and this is a very small motorcycle, no two ways about it. I got a pretty heavy bend in my knee riding along here. The seat's pretty low, of course, and you know, the foot pegs are not especially low because it was intended to be, you know, at least something of an off-road bike. So yeah, you know, I'm at 6'2". I'm a little bit cramped up here, and of course my knees are just below the handlebar. But it's a surprisingly comfortable place to sit. You're sort of upright. You know, you're not cramped or leaning over in any way that's weird or ridiculous. It's sort of like an ADV riding position, if you will. Maybe the original ADV bike. Yeah, I think if you get to be 6'4", 6'6", something like that, you'd probably start to run into legroom trouble. But the seat's pretty wide and I don't know, accommodating in general, especially considering this seat is, you know, 50 years old, almost anyway. It's really not a bad place to sit. There's certainly less comfortable bikes out there, brand new, that you can get today. Okay, Trail 90 versus semi-truck drag race. Oh, just absolutely blew it out of the water. Oh. Yeah, I'm a little bit too heavy for this suspension. It's certainly designed to be more, you know, sort of plush, oh gosh, than compliant, you know. Just supposed to glide along and soak up bumps in general. And, it's got nice high profile tires. Those gummy tires soak up a little bit of bumpage anyway. But I'm certainly a little bit big for this bike in general. As we approach a red light here, maybe not a bad time to talk about this semi-automatic transmission. So I'm in 4th gear here, and to downshift all I have to do is push down, and a little clutch you know, disengages the gears and re-engages them as you push on the lever. So now I'm in 1st gear. I've pushed down 3 times, and when the light goes green, I'll twist the throttle and the clutch will engage, move the bike forward. And when it comes time to shift, you just have to roll out of the throttle, lift up on the shifter, and then roll back into the throttle as you let the shifter go. All right, here we go, rejoining the daily rider route into the neighborhood here. And you might be expecting the Trail 90s around town manners to be very, very good. And I don't think you're going to be disappointed. Here we go. How about some footless stops? Should be a cinch with this bike, right? Come to a stop. Get on the gas. Oh gosh. Then 2nd gear. Doesn't have a whole lot of torque, if we're honest. But first footless stop in the books. It felt pretty good. Here we go. Oh yeah. It's obviously easy to handle at low speed because the weight is so low, and it's just so incredibly unintimidating. And you don't really have to worry about clutch feel because it all just happens automatically. Oh no! Swerving around and then get in trouble. So it's obviously a very polite and easy and tame motorcycle to ride. But being old, it does take some more, you gotta kind of pay attention in some ways that you might not have to otherwise, I guess. You know, the transmission, the brakes, stuff's showing its age, and it really benefits from good treatment and not just thrashing on it. You are just about at its limit for, you know, performance when you're riding around in areas like this. I mean, this is suburbia, right? Like, this isn't a hugely, you know, busy, or these aren't high-speed roads, but it's really slow. I mean, someone driving along the road in a Honda Accord right now might be a little disappointed. Yeah, getting waves from the Harley guys. I love that. People in average cars might be disappointed at how slow I'm going. And I'm at maximum speed. Lover's Lane, where we talk about passenger accommodations, will be a short conversation this time around because there is no passenger seat on this Trail 90. There is an attachment, and there are passenger pegs, as you'll see. But it's not designed for passenger comfort, let's just put it that way. I would be careful if you have someone on the back, because the bike's going to be even slower and even more unwieldy, and the person's probably not going to be hugely comfortable. Interesting note, the new Trail 125, which is the current model that sort of mimics this bike's style and has some of the same mechanical features, does not have any passenger pegs or any passenger seat, although you can see in the swing arm that there are bungs for passenger foot pegs to be attached. So you know, someone had that idea at some point. They were thinking that that was going to be a thing they were going to do. Okay, I'm not at wide open throttle anymore. I'm going fast enough. I feel I don't need to go any faster than this. It handles pretty well though. I can't believe those frickin' Bazooka Joe tires have any feel whatsoever. This is a hoot though. Not dragging foot pegs. And we're catching up to traffic. Ugh. Didn't think that was going to happen today. The handling is quite balanced and reasonable in my estimation, but I did mention that, you know, it's sort of agile, borderline twitchy, and the reason I brought that up, the reason I said that, and I'm bringing it up again, is that this bike will feel weird if you're used to riding full-size motorcycles. You know, if you have a, whatever, a Ninja 650 or an MT-07 or a R1150 GS or something like that, all those bikes handle well, perfectly well. If you get on a bike this small, it feels kind of genuinely miniature and different and weird, which is not altogether bad, you know. It's a whole different experience riding a bike like this, but something to keep in mind, that the way the bike reacts to your body weight is different, and you know, there's the geometry of it. It's just small. The wheelbase is short. It's a very different thing when compared to a full-size bike. Sometimes we discuss the engine of the motorcycle during this point in the daily ride, and I gotta say, this engine is not, you know, it's sort of the crown jewel of this bike in some ways, because it's the thing that made this bike what it was. It was the thing that was so reliable and so easy to use, and you know, and it sort of is the foundation of why people kept buying them, you might say. But in general, the cool thing about this engine, I think, and the reason I think it's such a good bike for someone who's new to motorcycles, is that it's especially good for someone who's new to motorcycles and wants to learn to work on something, because it's very easy to work on. It's simple. It involves all the really basic things about internal combustion engines without overcomplicating it or having things be hugely expensive. I think that that's pretty cool. It's a legendary little mill down there. about as simple as it gets. But yeah, everything's accessible and understandable, and if you're looking to get into motorcycles or especially learn how to be a mechanic of a better mechanic or a mechanic of any kind, this is a pretty good place to start. Fun little project. It's sort of halfway to a lawnmower. So I did get a lot of questions about how this bike compared to the modern Trail 125 that I rode across Alaska while Ari rode this. I was just talking about how this is a great bike to have if you're interested in becoming a mechanic, or which I stand by. But if you're not looking to become a mechanic and you just want a bike like this, I have to say that modern Trail 125 was pretty great. It's functionally does all the same things. It's approximately the same size and similar seat design. Of course, it was modeled after this bike. It's going to be a little bit faster. It's going to be a little bit more predictable. It's going to have better brakes, and you're not going to have to work on it. So if you're not interested in becoming a mechanic, but you do like the idea of the sort of semi-automatic transmission and the approachability of this bike, then yeah, I say take a look at that Trail 125. Next up, the off-road shortcut on the Trail 90, which I think what's going to happen here, but I'm expecting complete and utter domination. Look at it go. Just terrific. Bopping along, confidence is high, tires are good, doesn't care about the sand. A terrific little bike. Maybe these little lumps and bumps here. Rap, rap, rap. I think I just bottomed the fork out. All right, here comes the jump. I'm a little nervous about the jump. I don't want to break this thing in half or anything. But we'll do a little one here. Yeah, definitely bottomed the fork. Bike's not good for jumping. Don't jump your Trail 90. Don't do it. But down a little dirt road or trail, yeah, absolutely. There goes Johnny Mustang there, leaving us in his dust. That is where we usually try and do a wheelie. Getting traffic behind us. Probably do a little wheelie here. Second gear. Oh yeah, did you see that? Front wheel came up. Wheelies in that sense on the Trail 90 will be easier the larger person you are, because the larger percentage of the total package your body weight represents, the easier it'll be for you to get the front wheel off the ground when you pull on it. Not exactly a wheelie machine. Coming in hot. Let me back it in. Whoa, did you hear that? It actually, I didn't think that was gonna work. Oh, that was pretty fun. We might have to try that again. Here we go. Wide open. Whoa, Jesus. Okay. Needless to say, no ABS and no real safety systems of any kind. And in this case, the nut behind the handlebars is loose, by God. One more time. Pretty fun. Pretty fun. You gotta say, you got to say. The U-turn test is gonna be pretty interesting. I feel like we might have a new U-turn champion on our hands. So U-turn test from the other side, because we can get closer to this line here. All right, right up on the line, full lock. Oh, almost made it in one parking space. Oh, what a little champion you are. What a lovely little machine on a lovely day. And I dare say, we just had a lovely, lovely daily ride. My goodness. Oh, magnificent, no? Still puffing a little bit of smoke. Yeah, just breaking in those new rings, or maybe even ring. Is there more than one ring in this engine? Probably, yeah. Anyway, wow. What a treat. We just did a daily ride on a slice of history. What a glorious little thing. All right, time for some of your Instagram questions, everybody. And let's jump right into it. First question is from Air Nav, who asks, or says, I should say, rate the sketch level 1 to 10. There's a little bit of sketch, sure. You know, the Bazooka Joe tires, the old transmission, the extreme lack of horsepower, but the sketch level will depend on your environment, I would say. If you're trying to ride around Los Angeles like I did, I'd give the sketch level a 6 or a 7. If you're trying to ride around, I don't know, some suburban or semi-rural area, low sketch level, you're going to find it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. I hope that's what you meant by sketch level. I'm getting a little too old to know how you kids these days speak. But anyway, there's my answer. Next question is from Black Sheep's Foot, who asks, what was the 125 like on your trip? Was the CT90 just slowing you down the whole time? Yeah, so in talking about the comparison between this bike and the modern Trail 125, yes, the Trail 125 is a lot faster. And I think it's one of the reasons I got such good gas mileage when we went across Alaska, is that I went the speed that Ari wanted to go, which was probably 70 to 80% of the speed that I could have been going on the newer bike. So yeah, the new bike is quite a bit faster and just a little more advanced, as will happen over the course of 46 years. Next question is from California Vernacular, who asks, for the CT90, is there a preferred model year? I guess I'm a little bit biased. This bike's a 1975, of course, and based on some of the history that I presented earlier, I think 74 or 74, I think, was the year that the bike got blinkers, and 72 or 1 maybe was the year that it got the modern telescopic fork. So some people might say, oh, well, if you have the old school fork on there, that's the preferred year, and maybe those people are right. I guess I would say 75 to me, this bike, 74, 75, would be the sort of, this is where it became the quintessential thing in my head. This sort of like, it took a slight turn toward modernity and had all the things that you needed, but it still included all of the neat little tidbits that the old bike had, like the low-speed transmission and the folding handlebar had been introduced by now. And so I think mid-70s. I think that's the one. That's the Trail 90 that to me is the quintessential one. But in the end, it's up to you. Next question is from Edge Back, who asks, is the high-low transmission a gimmick or actually useful? Should Honda have put it on the new version? It is not a gimmick. It is, I suppose it's a gimmick, but it's totally useful. It's a legitimate piece of technology. And again, if you haven't seen the CTXP episode where this bike is ridden across Alaska by Ari and me on a modern Trail 125, please do watch that episode, and you'll see he uses the low-speed transmission, and it really does help. I mean, this bike doesn't have a ton of power, so when it comes to really steep hills, or if you wanted to load it down with a whole bunch of stuff, or try to drag a log away from a creek or something like that, then the low-speed transmission is totally legit. Should they put it on the new bike? No, I don't think so. I just don't think that it really would add that much to the new bike. It's just a complication. It would have to be more expensive. That era is gone. And I love that this bike has it, but I don't think the new bike needs it realistically. Next question is from Inner Motor Bike, who asks, liking old bikes is totally subjective, but what has charmed you with the CT that was missing in the Cub? And maybe by Cub means Trail 125. I think this might be called the Cub in other markets or something. I hope I'm answering this question correctly. I think that what charms me about this bike is the fact that it's a time machine. You know, you get to sort of sit on this thing and think, wow, this was a piece of what contributed to the massive success and the legendary status of this bike, and to a certain extent, Honda as a motor company. I think that is just really special. And I like feeling how the old transmission works, and how the old brakes work, and how the old suspension works. And I just think it's a really special look into a piece of motorcycling history, and that's why I love it. When it comes to actual usability and practicality, if you want to get across town and have something that works, then I don't think you can argue against a new bike. So I hope that answers your question. Last question is from Nate Baird, who asks, which is more dangerous, a ride across Alaska or a ride to the office in Los Angeles? And in relation to this motorcycle, I would say a ride across Los Angeles would be more dangerous. I think in general I felt a little bit more nervous and on edge today than I did trundling across the middle of nowhere in Alaska. Just I don't know if the bike was just at home, or or, you know, just the more cars that are around, the less comfortable you're liable to feel on a bike this size. Anyway, thank you so much for your Instagram questions. Let's put this sucker on the Daily Rider leaderboard, and then I'll let you go.
Hi everybody, here we are inside RevZilla West, and next to the Daily Rider leaderboard, we got the Trail 90 on the board here with a little heart next to it. See a little heart there? Yeah, that's because we got lots of love for the Trail 90. I know some of the old bikes get a heart, but this one, I mean, just Trail 90 took us to the top of Alaska, northernmost point in the United States. How could we not have a little bit of love for that little guy? Friendly reminder of what's at the top of the Daily Rider leaderboard. You got your R1250 GS from BMW, Ducati Multistrada V4, Kawasaki Versa 650, holding down the top 3 spots. We had a top 5 finish recently with the NC750 DCT from Honda. And then looking down the list here for other small bikes, I don't know, we got Yamaha MT-03 here. I don't know, basically, we got a lot of noise in the background here. Our neighbors are having some kind of party, and I can't say exactly what it is because I wasn't invited. My phone must have been busy or something, or like, I don't know, someone didn't have my number or whatever. Not a big deal, but anyway, if you hear background noise, sorry about that. I guess for all the small bikes, you're looking down here, Dumb and Dumber Hog, Super 73 RX, that's a pedal assist e-bike, and then an electric motorcycle, Cape Calc down here, kind of pricey as we can see from the dollar sign there. So is it better than a Cape Calc electric motorcycle? I mean, component-wise, not really. Like the Cake's brakes are better, and but the CT90, the Trail 90 is more comfortable and better looking, in my opinion. That's subjective. And range is better. I think you'd have a lot more trouble riding the Cape Calc Cape Calc, I think it actually is, to the top of Alaska than the Trail 90. So I'm going to give it the nod. It's going to sit just below Dave the Gixxer here. I think I'd probably still take Dave the Gixxer to work more often than not, if I'm being honest. That's a pretty bad finish. 4th from the bottom for the Trail 90. I'm not feeling great about that, but you know, it is what it is. It does get a little heart because a lot of sentimental value, but I think that's a fair finish. And like I said, lots and lots of other really good motorcycles on that list, which of course will be transitioned to another board here coming up soon. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, I just had a blast on today's Daily Rider. It was so much fun sharing the motorcycle with you. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you'll check out the CTXP episode, the episode of the shop manual ASMR video where Ari refreshes the Trail 90. And in general, hope you ride safe. We learned something, had fun, you know the deal. See you next time, everybody. Peace.
All right, well, sometimes at traffic lights we talk about the dash. This one's got a needle on it that goes up for speed, and then it's got a thing for how many miles you've gone, and then another thing for how many miles you've gone, but it'll be less miles.